even the concept of being non-binary and not having a gender, it's like stripping away even like your basic level
That's
like
right.
qualities as a human being. So
That's right.
absolutely, like that's exactly what they stand for. And then you go to
Yes.
have a even deeper political conversation with somebody like that, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden they do start talking to you about Marxist values and communism and all of those things. And that's why I
Wow.
value freedom of speech, because
Thank you.
I don't think that people like that necessarily need to be censored. I
No.
think that we need to bring them to the table to debate. Okay, well, if communism is so good, why are there three countries left in the world that
Yeah.
practice it, and why do they look like that?
Yeah.
Why do they look like that?
Hey everyone, I caught myself another one today, so it's going to be a great conversation. And before we move forward, thanks again for liking, subscribing, joining my channel, doing all those things that you do to make this channel go crazy. And I always love these guys. That's how I get these awesome guests. So with that, I have Daniel today, and Daniel's going to introduce himself, and then we'll move forward. Hey, Daniel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel. I am, I guess, the host of what you can call Canceled Conversations. Started off as a podcast, but and then transitioned into making social topic videos and political commentary videos. And now I'm here. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, no, right on. Thanks for reaching out, dude. I totally appreciate it. So I'm so happy that you're doing all that work. Tell me a little bit about your background, a little bit, like where you're from and how you got into this situation.
It's kind of like a long story, I guess. So at least background wise, I was born in
Yeah.
Cuba.
Okay.
I come from a very politically, I guess the only way to describe it is politically difficult, because I still live in a country where communism is like the main government. And so, if I'm not mistaken, there's only a few countries like that left in the world where it's as crazy as it is over there in Cuba. I think there's only like three or four of us left of those big countries. And to be honest with you, that I guess foreshadows part of why I do what I do now. Um, I think that I want to say maybe 2020, I started getting a lot more political. I think everyone did. Yeah, I think everyone did. And so I started to kind of look more into, I guess, people you can say maybe most people would kind of stay away from, like the Ben Shapiros and like the Candace Owens and like Daily Wire and all that stuff,
Hmm.
and like Tucker Carlson. And so I started kind of like looking into people that everyone told me was like the bad guys and I shouldn't listen to them. Right. And I shouldn't listen to them and I should stay away from that. And I've been that way basically my whole life. And so I guess you can say, coming from a country where there's not a lot left over for people, and there will be many arguments about that in the comments, because a lot of people like to argue that it's great over there. It's not. It's not. When you have to resort to eating like household pets because there's no food, I wouldn't say that that's too great, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So I have a cat, and sometimes looking at my cat and kind of thinking about how some people are like fending, using household pets as food. It's
Wow.
not something that happens all the time. Obviously, it's like something that
Yeah.
humans have shame about, because like a normal person would have shame about something like that. But there are rare cases where that stuff does happen.
Sure. How,
And so I
wait, can I
guess,
ask, how
yeah,
old are you? How old are you?
I
You're
am
young.
only 22.
Wow. I
Yeah.
love that you're 22 and I love that you're doing this because that really gives me hope for the future. And I also want to say something real quick. When people tell you, kiddo, I'm 62 and I'm going to call you kiddo. When people
That's
tell you
fine. You
not
get
to
the
do,
right to.
when people tell you don't do something or don't look at something or I read it, you don't need to do it, that's when you actually need
Yep.
to do it. So good for you for not listening to those people and actually listening to the people they told you not to. Would you consider yourself a more conservative leaning person?
That's a great question. And that's kind of what I was about to get to with 2020, where like everything kind of got a little jumbled up. And I think most people started questioning what the quote unquote truth was about just like the general government.
Right.
And so I started to question things, because I always considered myself a very intense liberal, like super big, like I think in 2020, like I was one of those people that had those, like I had like a mask that said Black Lives Matter on it. And I was like super big on like watching, I used to be super big on watching the Young Turks. And
Yeah.
I just kind of got to a point where once the president that we have currently right now went into power, and I started seeing the differences in the way that people would speak to each other and just like the
Mhm.
economic differences, I started questioning a lot of things.
Great.
And that
Great.
honestly led me to question everything else. Once I started questioning my own community and what, right, and kind of like what community meant, and kind of figuring out that I'm not really somebody that people would want to have in the community, because if you
Mm,
kind of look at the topics that I do on my channel,
mm.
some of it is clickbait. If you just, pay attention to the titles, we all do it. But
That's right.
if
You
you
have
actually
to.
listen, right, exactly, you kind of have to.
Mhm.
If you actually listen to what I have to say, though, I consider myself to be a centrist. I just kind of think that, and I've said this before on my channel, we've kind of gone so far left that like anything that's not super duper left is like you're a Republican. Right,
Excellent.
and I wouldn't consider myself a Republican. I feel like if I were to have a conversation with a Republican and we start talking about, let's say, like abortion rights or
Mhm.
the way that we want immigration to go, I think we start having a different conversation. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I've described myself as new right. I've described
Great.
myself as a independent, as a centrist. I think it kind
Okay.
of just depends on the issue, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm literally in alignment with you politically. That being said, I've been a liberal my whole life. I've been a Democrat my whole life. I do not consider myself a Democrat at this point, which is
Hmm.
sad. But are you part of the LGBT community?
Yes, I am
You
gay.
are. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to ask. I don't want to obviously make assumptions there.
Yeah.
So I call it the LGBT community. I'm old
Honestly,
school.
I've started calling it, I've called it the alphabet community, I've called it the keyboard community, because if you just throw your hands on a keyboard, you're gonna get the
Totally.
community, you know? Sometimes I like to call myself just I usually refer to it as the LGB or T community, because I
Yeah,
feel like all of
yeah,
us are very independent in some way. I think
yeah,
the only ones that are a little bit more close to each other are gays and lesbians, just
yeah.
because we're both like same-sex attracted.
That's right.
But I think when
I
it comes to
agree.
like everything else, it's I don't know, it's
It's a
not the same.
mess. Let me,
Right.
oh my gosh, friend, I've been part of that community for literally, I'd say 40 years. It is nowhere near what it used to be, nor
Mhm.
is it a community. It's not
At
anymore.
all.
And we have separated. And I do see why LGB wants to separate from the TQIA pee pee poo poo. It's a mess over the other
Right.
side. They've destroyed us. It's gross. I'm so happy to see a youngster like you just actually
Thank
have
you.
such great eyes open and willing to step up and say the things that you say, because if we don't, we need you not only for the community but outside of LGBT community. We need you as a young voice saying, hey, wait a minute, it is okay for me to be a but more conservative, whatever that means, right?
Right.
We need you to say, you know what, I don't have to be this way because I'm LGBT and young, and you know what I mean. So that's so powerful to me, and I just want to keep saying thank you
Thank
for
you.
having,
I appreciate that.
having the self-awareness at 22. To have that much self-awareness says a lot about you, and I think you have a future ahead of you because of that. Now, that being said, I'm not conservative. I don't, but people would assume I'm conservative,
Right.
and I think that happens to you.
Yes, it does. And
Yeah,
not just because of the clickbait titles that I sometimes use,
sure.
but just in general, I think that, like I was mentioning just a moment ago, I think that when we start having a conversation, and I actually, I watched, which I thought it was awesome. I saw the conversation that you had with, I think it was Charlie Kirk. You had the conversation about, you guys went back and forth on trans issues. It
Yep,
was very refreshing just to kind of see the
yep.
conversation on both sides.
Excellent.
And I think that when you actually go to have a conversation like that with
Mhm.
somebody that would consider themselves to be a conservative, I think it very easily shows that we're not conservatives.
Yeah,
It just
yeah,
goes to show that things have gone so far to a certain extent that just anybody that is not the exact script, because it has become kind of scripted. Oh,
yeah.
I'm a lesbian, I'm non-binary, I'm half black, I don't know, something. It's always something. So, I think when you actually sit and have a conversation with somebody like that, we're not, you come to find out that we're not conservatives. It's just, it's become such a mess.
Well, and also the divisiveness, right? Like I'm not supposed. People got mad at me for going on TPUS and speaking with Charlie, and I thought, wow, how dare you? First off, that's
Hmm.
how you get into a better space. You build
Right.
bridges with these people who actually do not like us. But I
Right.
walked away from that conversation with shaking hands and Charlie thanking me for being on,
Hmm.
and I think I changed his mind on some things, especially around trans, and that he can see there are transsexual adults like myself who do need this. And so that's why these conversations are important. We're
Absolutely.
probably going to be, me and you are probably going to be in alignment on many, many things, but stepping up to the plate and talking, I've been on Fox News, I've been all these things that
Hmm.
people are like, stay away. Don't. I'm like, what? Those people have an idea about us. Unless we sit at the table with them and at least have the conversation, they're just not going to be okay with some of the lifestyle choices that we have. I don't have, I'm not okay with a lot of lifestyle choices they have or
Right.
the things they force on me, but I live in the United States of America. Now, let's go back, and you come from Cuba. You actually live there at some
So I
point?
was born there. I
Wow.
came when I was very young because multiple different reasons, but long story short, the government there is very different. And so my parents wanted me not only just not to starve, but at the age of 17, every single person that lives in Cuba, all of the males, they get shipped off to a camp in the middle of nowhere. Right when you turn
Wow.
17, you get shipped off to a camp in the middle of nowhere and they force you into military training and like you learn how to be a militant for a month. Well, I
Wow.
don't know if it's for a month. I don't quote me on that part, but I do
Sure.
know that you go for I think it's for a summer that you go for and it's like forced. Like you have to like you get like removed from your home and you have to go. And so for reasons like that, my parents decided long time ago that they wanted to take us away from that
Hmm.
and give us the opportunity to have better lives for ourselves. And
Excellent.
that's kind of why I love this country so much. And I don't have that,
Excellent.
like, if this country syndrome. I don't know if I can
Eh.
curse, but,
Well, you can go
I don't.
ahead, right? You're talking to me, dude.
So I don't have this like this country syndrome. I'm very very grateful for this country cuz
Excellent.
especially with the conversation that's going on right now with like all the wars that are going on internationally, I
Yeah.
think that one of the most important things that we can all do is kind of just give each other the opportunity of just conversation. Like I think that all of us could get a better understanding of each other's points and like where
Yes.
each other is coming from if we all just like sat with one another. I'm not
Hmm.
talking about like, intense protest kind of the debate where people come head to head. I'm
Hmm.
talking about like an actual sit down conversation. Let's discuss what we have in between us and kind of get through it. I think we
Great.
would all be a lot better off if we were able to do that. And
Well,
unfortunately, the left doesn't want to do that.
why? Why do you think they don't want to do that? Do you
Well,
have
because
any clue?
to me, I would think honestly, and it's just my opinion, I think it's because there's no logical argument behind the behavior. And so it's kind of hard to sit there and be like, "Hey, let's talk." You know what I mean? Like
That's
when
right.
you're having a conversation with Amala and Blossom, that's
Oh,
kind of hard to have a conversation there.
don't get me started, dude. That one, but walked away making a lot of people have a different mindset around
Mhm.
transsexuals, and why I always say I'm transsexual, I'm not transgender.
Right.
And Blossom is a complete nutcase weirdo. She's such a man. I'm giving her that I'm giving her
You said it,
she.
not me.
I did, and I'll say it again. She's a man, and she's gross and disgusting, and she just wanted to, block me and my voice. And if you notice, she wouldn't even give me a chance. But that being said,
She wouldn't.
that's why those shows are very important, because then I represented on some level, and I want people to see. I'll debate anybody. I'll
I
debate the
think you should.
devil.
I think you should. I think that if you're comfortable in your positions and you feel like you know what you're talking about, you should be able to have a debate with someone. And that's
Brilliant.
why I one of the things that and not to kiss your ass or anything, but one of the things
No.
that I appreciate so much about you, Buck, is the transparency that you have about who you are as a person. I was having a conversation about this with someone the other day because we were just talking about the general transsexual versus transgender debate.
Yeah.
And the transparency is so important because you're a transsexual for a reason. You
That's
have
right.
something that was medically diagnosed. You didn't just wake up one day and start cutting parts of yourself off or adding things on. You went to a doctor and you actually did what you had to do and got medically diagnosed. And so
Yeah.
it's really important for us to be able to have that differentiation,
Thank you.
because the other side is like, oh well, I'm non-binary, so even though I don't believe in gender, I'm transgender.
All my god, brilliant! I know that's the
So
insanity of it all, and like, yeah, how do you think? I mean, there's just so many levels to what you just said. It's just shocking that we're in this space and we did this to these poor young kids. Don't think I have a lot of empathy for these kids. I think they're being led down a
I
path
do
by
too.
gross adults, gross weirdo
Hmm.
adults.
And
I mean,
doctors.
and doctors. There's money attached.
Hmm.
All of it, my friend, because we would have never done this before. It took years for me to get to this. I was through structure, right? They didn't just let me go have my breast cut off. They didn't just
Right.
even at 30, I had to get a letter from a psychologist and follow all these rules. It wasn't I could just walk in and say I want my breast cut off, and to cut a 15-year-old girl's
Right.
breasts off because she says she's non-binary. Now you don't even need to be trans. You could be non-binary and get your breast cut off. What? Yeah, it's shocking, dude.
And it's
It's
happening a lot. It's happening quite a bit. It's happening a lot. And the sad part is that people are saying that it's not happening a lot. And what I think is even scarier is that they're saying that it's reversible.
oh my god, it's like cutting my arms off. It's reversible. They'll grow back.
Right.
Really? I'm
Right.
not a
We're
lizard.
lizards. Right. Yeah. We're lizards.
I mean, the whole thing. We laugh, but my gosh,
It's
these young
happening.
kids,
It's
these
happening.
young kids are going to be so screwed. We already have detransitioners, right? Suing and all of it, my friend. It's just shocking that we're in this space. So that's why I think it's so important that we in our community, I use that lightly, an elder, myself being older and you being a younger person, have these conversations because I think generationally it is important for me and you to sort of come to the table with different opinions against them, right? Because they're the ones who
Absolutely.
are running the community, not us.
Yeah. And I think that, and because you said something important, I think that we should kind of explain the what we mean by them, because a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, well, they're the ones creating divide too." Well, unfortunately, we wouldn't want to create a divide, but when you make it to where part of what you stand for is, mutilating children,
Mm,
you make it a little difficult to be able to not make a differentiation between you and me. And I
thank you.
think that for most people, like I've had people ask me the question of like, "Oh, you're gay. Okay, well, but like, do you believe in like all that like weird stuff with like the whole kid thing?" And
Wow.
no, I don't. But unfortunately, because of, what this has become and what things like pride festivals have become,
Oh,
I have to answer questions like that.
that's
So,
right.
and
Great
and that's
point.
that's what happens when you breed that kind of behavior in our community.
That's right. And we fought. I mean, our history, we fought against
Hmm.
these people bringing children in. There's a thing called NAMBLA. I say it all the time, National Association. We fought. We were like, get away from us. And now we're
Hmm.
literally having naked kids in parades. Like, that's real. Then people say, that's not happening, Buck. I'm like, I literally saw a picture. I
Yep.
actually saw a picture of a kid on a bike naked with a bunch of naked adults going through a pride event. Do not tell me this isn't happening.
Yeah,
Do not
because
tell
they
me.
treat it like Santa Claus. They treat it like Santa Claus. It's almost like,
Wow.
you have to show me a picture or I can't believe you. It can't just be, but then when
Right.
they want to
Right.
talk about like allegorical arguments, then they're
Yes.
allowed to do that. Then they're
That's
allowed to
right.
talk about what ifs and, oh, I saw,
That's right.
then, Blossom can stand in front of Blair White and say, "Oh, well, black trans women are being killed every 2
Oh my
seconds." And,
god.
Blair's like, "Well, that statistic is skewed because it comes from prostitutes." And she's like, "Oh,
That's right.
well, I was right." So,
Yeah, I know. That's the thing is we have people like her putting out misinformation in our about our community, and
mhm.
but she's doing such a huge disservice to us, and that's why there's going to be so much backlash towards you and I, not just trans people, you and I,
Oh,
you
I've
as a
gotten it
young
already.
gay. Are
I
you?
get I get death threat. I get death threats. I
Oh
get people sending me
no.
crazy messages. I get the
What?
craziest shit. Yeah, I do. And to be honest with you, I've kind of gotten to a point where, and maybe if it ever becomes to something where somebody tries to try something physical, maybe my
Mhm,
opinion will change then. But
mhm,
as of right now, I've adopted the opinion where it's going to get to a point where, unfortunately, in the future, whether it's 10 or 15 years from now,
mhm.
there is either going to be a gigantic lawsuit that's going to happen because of all of these detransitioners, and there's going to be a big shift in our country
That's
where a
right.
lot of people are going to be like, "Were you part of that? Did you have
That's right.
anything to do with that?
Mhm,
Are you sure?" And
mhm,
then all of a sudden, we're going to be back in the 1980s,
mhm.
1990s, where we're going to have to explain our rights again, and
That's
we're going to
right.
have to start over again. And then that's when people are going to actually start getting scared and fearful in our community.
Oh
That's when
no,
that's going to happen. So it's
it's a
important for us to be able to talk about this stuff.
well, because we can't. We fought too hard. We lost, I come from the AIDS epidemic, friend. I
Right.
lost all my male gay friends to AIDS, all of them. And
Hmm.
so I'm so shocked that this young generation is just so flippant and acts like, oh, we're under siege. No, you're not. I've been doing this for 30 something years. I live a great life, dude. I walk the street,
Right.
like, no, 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 it is not. But they're throwing us back out to the wolves on some level. So
Hmm.
tell me a little bit about so you come to the United States at 17? Is that when you came
No,
here?
okay.
Yeah.
I could have elaborated there a little
That's
more.
okay. That's
So
okay.
so I came when I was like I think I want to say maybe like a year and a half, a
Oh,
year and a half.
great.
Yeah. So I
Great,
was like a
great,
baby when I came because of
great.
the fact that my parents knew that all of those things were going to come in the future. So
Okay.
they kind of just decided to before all of
Yeah.
those things come, and at that point it's harder to take us all out of Cuba. It was a little better
Sure.
to get out early. So I was
Yeah.
like a year and a half.
Wow. Okay. So whereabouts did you guys move to Miami?
Yep,
Like
you
Florida?
guessed it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's interesting because in part of my life I was homeless and I met a gay Cuban guy and he became like one of my best friends and his family, they're black Cubans and they brought me into their house. I lived with them. They were so and I was a girl. I was a butch dykey little girl, but they were so amazing. Dude, I'm not kidding. They on some level saved my life. And I was surrounded by
I'm
the
glad to hear that.
Cuban American space here in LA, and it was so Santeria. They practiced Santeria, and it was like this very Cuban, and it was like really one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I learned a lot about your culture and just loving beautiful people.
We're
But
very
because of
family
that,
oriented.
yes, very family oriented, and then that's where I sort of learned sort of family because I didn't have my own family at the time, but the Cuban family took me in. So I have a like a really like a soft spot in my heart for Cubans. So of course I know
Well,
all
thank
the
you.
Cubans live in Miami. So there you are. You're one. You get there and you grow up in Miami. Are your parents teaching you about your culture?
Oh, yes, yes. Like,
Great.
I've been highly aware of, like, in my household growing up, it was very, like, frowned upon, or you would be looked at sideways if you were, you ever kind of spoke about socialism or communism in a way that
Yeah.
was positive. Like, I
Right.
come from a family of people where, like, you know, my family was well off, and like in
Mhm.
Cuba, the thing that people don't understand about Cuba is that, like, the all of the social issues, like the big social issues with racism and all of those big issues that, we still have in this country. In Cuba, those things were solved like a long time ago.
Right.
Like, I have pictures with family of, like, a full big table of people dressed super super nice to the nines, and it
Mhm.
was a big mix of black and white, because
Mhm.
these things they moved on from those things.
Right.
And so I came from, seeing my family came from seeing such, I guess you would call it, it was almost like people describe older Cuba, they describe it as a Las Vegas. It was basically what
Oh,
Las Vegas is
wow.
here. It was supposed to be like that, but in Cuba. So
Wow.
that's what, like, living in the area that because I lived in Havana, that's what that was like. And
Yeah.
so my family came from, like, seeing such nice, beautiful things, and, like,
Yeah.
it was different to then seeing from one year to the next everything crumble and turn to shit. And to this
Yeah.
day, the buildings look the same. There's no infrastructure change. They haven't changed anything. It still looks the same.
Yes. That's
So,
the backlash of communism,
right,
right?
absolutely.
And that's why I just love talking to young people who understand what you have in this country. And that's because your family comes from that stuff and understands the
Hmm.
value of this country and the value of freedom of speech, of freedom, of the things
Absolutely.
you get to do. It's always the immigrants. My dad's
Absolutely.
Canadian, and on some level, he's an immigrant on some level. And so the same thing. I was brought up very pro-American, to be proud, to be all of
Hmm.
those things. And but this is why there's a movement within the LGBTQIA community that I think is based on some level Marxism and socialism.
Oh,
I see
absolutely.
Absolutely.
It comes directly from all of those things. It comes directly from all of it, like, just even the concept of being non-binary and not having a gender. It's like stripping away even, like, your basic level,
That's
like,
right.
qualities as a human being. So,
That's right.
absolutely, like, that's exactly what they stand for, and then you go to
Yes.
have a even deeper political conversation with somebody like that, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden, they do start talking to you about Marxist values and communism and all of those things, and that's why I
Wow.
value freedom of speech because
Thank you.
I don't think that people like that necessarily need to be censored. I
No.
think that we need to bring them to the table to debate. Okay, well, if communism is so good, why are there 3 countries left in the world that
Yeah.
practice it, and why do they look like that?
Yep.
Why do they look like that?
That's right. Great. Because these young kids don't know. It's the same situation. I'm very against the Free Palestine movement, and I find that to be also a kind of a hoax on some level. If these people understood, now I'm not saying Palestinian people should be murdered and killed and killed.
Mhm.
No, 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 no. That's horrible. But the actual political aspect of it and all that, the same thing to me is being led and charged by these anti-American people on some level, and they don't. It's as if this I don't know, you have such a great mindset as a young person. I feel the fact that you're willing to look deeper than just here says something, but I don't feel like the younger generation is willing to look past what they're being told to look at. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm glad that you pointed that out because I have a perfect example for that. Back in 2020, before I had, like, my social political awakening, whatever
Okay.
you'd like to call it,
Yeah.
I was, like I told you, that kind of person that did have, like, a big
Yes.
Black Lives Matter mask, and
Yeah.
that was because I was guided through just everything that I was seeing on social media and that
Right.
people my age were being told to believe. And so when you find
Yes.
out that I actually said this on my channel recently,
Mhm.
nobody has a problem with the phrase Black Lives Matter. Everyone knows that the life of Black people matter. The
That's
problem that comes from that phrase is the way that some people use it to almost be like, you're white, you suck.
that's
Black
right.
Lives Matter. And so that's a problem because we go full circle into, like, not being equal again. And so, the whole thing with Free Palestine, I'm not a proponent for war. I don't believe that we should be too active in war. And to be honest with you, as considering myself a Cuban American,
Mhm.
I'm worrying about what we're doing in this country. Now, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that I am not, like, socially conscious or I'm not, like, emotionally attached to the situation going on over there because
Mhm.
one thing that I do think is that it's extremely complex of a subject. It's not like any other war. It's
That's right.
extremely complex of a subject.
Mhm.
And I just genuinely believe that the best way to go about something like this is to just continue to educate yourself and
That's right.
continue to learn and
Right.
read and from both sides of the coin.
That's
But
right.
what I think is problematic is the queers for Palestine. I think that's just ignorant because while I am not of the proponent and I don't personally believe the idea of, like, well, you don't agree that I should be alive, we should bomb you. I am not of that belief. I think at the end of the day, people should be able to be them, and then that's your country. You do your thing. This is America. That doesn't happen here. I don't have to worry about that.
Mhm.
But to be so stupidly, um, just the phrasing of queers for Palestine when the main religion in said region quite often, not just in certain books, quite often we've seen videos of people getting dragged through streets, of people getting their asses beat. We need to cool it.
Yeah.
We need to cool it.
Yeah.
That's it. We need to cool it.
Well, it's gross because these young people don't even understand what, and they're being led by, there's people who are also organizing those. And again, I think our young generation is lost on some level and they feel like they need to be a part of something, right? Especially in the LGBT movement. I feel like we're free here. I don't care what anybody says. You're pretty free.
Absolutely.
Unless you go into some middle town, maybe in middle America, up in the mountains and stuff, you probably shouldn't be doing certain things. But in majority of this country, people just don't care. And I'm telling you, I know because I lived it 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
And we did get our asses beat and we did die of
Mhm.
AIDS and there were horrible things and we didn't get married and blah, 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 blah. But I feel as if they're hunting for something to, so that's why they latched on to queers for Palestine, and how embarrassing is that? It's actually
Mhm.
embarrassing for our community for that to be
Mhm.
happening. But what you said is very important. It's a complex subject that we should not be talking about because we don't understand it. It is a war that's been going on forever, and it'll probably keep going on, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
I'm not even sure that there's going to be a solution to that situation.
At
And
least not for a very long time,
that's
unfortunately.
right. That it's horrible. It's horrible. We all can agree with that. I think there's no doubt we all believe in none of that nonsense and bombing people and all that's horrible. But
Absolutely.
that is happening, and we need to
Mhm.
say, okay, we got to let them figure their stuff out.
Right.
But it will affect us on some level if we don't have understand what we have here. Because I want to come back to America. America, I love this country, dude. I lived in Mexico for 10 years. Excellent country. I loved it, but it's not America. You don't have the same things in other
There
countries. I've
is no other
traveled.
America.
There is no, I've traveled the world over, dude. There is no America. I always come back here. And that, I think, I think what happens is you, when you live in a space that you're so free to do and say anything you want, you forget that you are free to say and do
Absolutely.
anything you want. And now you have
We
to
take it
find
for
something
granted.
else, yeah, to be pissed off about. So I love that your family understands those values and taught you those values. So here you are growing up, and you're in. When did you come out to your parents as a gay person?
I did.
Yeah.
I came out to my parents when I was 11 years old. So I was
Wow.
very, very young. Yeah.
Wow.
It was quite the experience. It was quite the traumatic experience. It took a lot. I come from like the cusp of time frame where like it was still not super okay. Like I feel like now in this generation, like most parents are more open minded to that stuff, and more
Mhm.
parents like I mean, like you said, we're not saying that hate crimes don't exist or that people in Middle
Yeah.
America or certain parts of the country are not more close
Sure.
minded, but it's more common now to be okay with things like that.
Yeah.
And so back then, when I was 11 years old in like 2012, it still wasn't fully okay. And it was a pretty intense experience. It took my parents a really long time to even
Yeah.
come around to us being like normal, like in
Mhm.
like a normal familial sense again.
Mhm.
It took some time, but I'd like to say that things are going pretty well. Things are basically pretty normal. And part of that experience that I had with my parents is what kind of taught me to be more outspoken,
Mhm.
especially to like, young adults, people in like I guess the gay community,
Mhm.
because I don't really think that people are talking about that specific kind of struggle anymore. It's like all about being non-binary and queer and right. And a lot of kids are
That's
still
right.
struggling with those certain conversations. And
That's right.
um you know it was important for me, so I've taken it upon myself to kind of say, yes, maybe you were bullied growing up, maybe you did have a hard time with your parents, maybe
Mhm.
you had a hard time in school, but you're an adult now, and these things are part of your formative years. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, someone's got to be the gay kid, someone's got to be the fat girl, someone's got to
That's right.
be, you're going to be a somebody to somebody, so
That's
you might as well
right.
just learn to care about yourself and love yourself and just
Great.
move on as an adult.
But that's great, and I think that there is actually a war within our community on homosexuality, and I think a lot of these young kids, well, we know it. It's a fact. A lot of these young kids, but especially the detransitioners, will tell you that they were just gay girls, but they were
Hmm.
being forced into the, and that's it's just perpetuating what we're trying to get out of, which was the stereotypes. I mean, we've had these conversations. Everybody knows that, but it's important for people to hear. That's why you, as a young gay man, is you're representing, and representation on some level does matter, because there might be a
Hmm.
young kid right now thinking I'm non-binary, but they might just be gay.
Right.
Right, and there's a shame attached to it. Again, I feel that there's some shame being led to these children that says you can't be gay, you have to be a man or a woman on some
Yep, it's
level.
conversion therapy.
Oh
Just
my god.
it's like the opposite way though.
Oh
Like
my god.
it's just conversion therapy, but it's the opposite way. And I was actually going to cover this topic on my channel in the next few weeks,
Great.
but I had a conversation, and I think you spoke with her too. I had a conversation with Brianna Ivy.
Hmm.
Um and it's becoming all too prevalent for people to be like, "Oh, well, I can't be gay. I'm just going to be a girl."
That's right.
And
That's
that is scary because it's the same thing with now everybody's queer. Why are you so afraid to use the word gay?
right. Right, you're right.
Like
There
we
you go.
fought so hard to be able to be like, we're gay, we're gay, we're gay. why are you so afraid to use the word gay? And why is it like we're not seeing it anymore? Because
Yeah.
back then, I'm not a big proponent of pride or pride merch. I think it's a bunch of bullshit.
Gross.
But we used to see shirts that said gay pride or
That's
love is
right.
love or gay whatever.
Right.
Now everything is like trans rights matter
Oh
and
God.
queer kids or some bullshit like that. And so again, it's conversion therapy.
Totally
I
agree.
don't know where it came from, or who in the extremely conservative right decided to do some sort of inside job to
You
make this
think?
be right, but I don't know how it
Yeah.
happened, but it's conversion therapy essentially.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And this is why these conversations are important. Some young person might be listening to us right now, right? And then they will say, oh, maybe I'm just gay. Maybe I'm just
Right.
a tomboy. Maybe I'm.
And you probably are just gay.
You probably are, but they're shoving. I was gay. I was a gay woman for a lot of my. I didn't transition until I was 30, and at 30, I realized, I'm gonna feel more comfortable living, looking like I'm not a man. Still a female, but I look like a man. I walk the world that way. It makes me more. But at 30, I made living my life as a gay woman for many, many years, which I'm so happy I did because I got that experience, and I
Right.
did figure out that I don't want to be a gay woman. I want to just be this man, and so these kids aren't even being given those opportunities to live some life. They're being shoved back into these ideas of everyone knows who they are. It's social media, friend. It is.
Hmm.
I'm watching it capture these young kids, and
Yeah,
that's
it's narcissism. It's a
yes,
way to like express your
yes,
narcissism. Social media is essentially part of it and kind of what pushes
yes,
people to go further into it. But
yes.
essentially it's just extreme bloated narcissism. It's
But
unfortunate.
it's so weird to me that our community has been so captured. You're right. And so I noticed this thing too. The flag, though, right, is supposed to represent us all. But now every time you see, well, we're not talking about that scary other flag that
And
is
the one that looks like
complete.
an umbrella.
Oh my god, umbrella! It's so sick. I don't even know what that shit is. But the flag is supposed to represent, and then I see the LGBT flag, and then I see the trans flag. I'm like, but wait, we're represented in that flag. Why are we now separating the trans, especially just the trans flag? So it's some manipulation process that's going on from
Right.
higher ups.
And
High,
why good big question. Why are there skin colors on that flag?
yeah, that's right. Why?
Hmm. That's
That's right.
weird.
It is weird. There you go. It's targeting. There's a target involved, and it's a manipulation, a subtle manipulation, and
Right,
people
because
don't
it's
really
it's not about equality anymore. It's
know.
literally a full political movement. So in order for you to
Totally.
be, it's basically like I feel like essentially what they're trying to do is just create some sort of flag that like almost directly counters the Trump flag, where
Yes.
it's like everyone is included in this flag and we have colors on it and we have skin
Yes.
colors on it and we have an umbrella on it now.
Oh my god. What's the circle? Do you
So,
know what the circle stands for? They
no, I
added
don't.
me neither. They added a circle, a butthole maybe. I don't know.
Probably very open-minded. Our
Oh
community is
my
very
god.
open-minded.
I'm like, "What?" Oh gosh, my neighbor had it flying, and I'm just like, "Oh, you people are so sick." Like, you don't even get how really actually divisive that flag is for our own community. It's
Yep.
literally destroyed our community.
It has. It has.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and one of the things that I feel like is become prevalent to other people. It used to be just a joke, but now it's like it's actually serious the way that like, oh, you can expect a new one in a few years.
Oh god,
Like
yeah,
now it's not a joke. It's like it's a thing now.
yeah.
Like you can
That's
actually
right.
expect one in a few years. We'll have a new one probably by next summer.
I
And
hate it.
so it's just weird because it kind of takes away from people like us who,
That's right.
just happen to, one of us happens to be gay and one of us happens to have what some consider a medical condition.
Yeah, I have a
So,
medical condition. Yeah.
right. And so it's one of those things where both of us have unique experiences that have put us in the situations that we're in now. And then there's
Yep.
some people that are cosplaying.
Yep. Right
So,
on. Right on. That's so important. And also, again, we're proving right here we're a real community. Me and you are what used to be the LGBT community. I'm not kidding you. It was so amazing. I miss that. I miss that part of that community. You're a gay man. I'm a transsexual, dude, female, and we could literally go and have a beer or hang out together, and there's no weirdness. But they're separating us to feel as if we're not like we have different. I don't really know what they're trying to achieve other than maybe separate us and make us feel that we don't. we don't belong together on some level. So when you do that, you break up a community. What happens when you break up a community? You break up power because there's power in numbers, right? So
Right.
now
It's about blurring the goal. If you blur the
yes,
goal and we're all
yes,
just like, "Oh, well, we're here and we don't
yes.
know what we're fighting for, but we're here." And we got the right to marry each other in 2012 and essentially we got our rights, but we're still here. So, at this
Where's
point normal people, the black community, they set up a museum somewhere, the Jewish
yeah,
people, they set up a museum
yep.
somewhere. Everybody has a museum, but we're still here. So,
It's
I
so
don't know.
good. But you can even see, black, there's a lot more black conservatives and people don't, and there's a lot more gay conservatives, right? There's a lot more of things that were never sort of in the conservative space that are moving because I think the new conservatives are the actual liberals, if that makes sense.
That's why I
To
mentioned
Alex.
earlier that I've sometimes called myself new right because
Oh,
I'm not
great.
really part of the right wing, but
Great.
if I talk to the, crazy liberals, they're going to be like, "Oh, well, you're a conservative." I've had people call me a Nazi. So,
Me too. And I
right.
live in a
So,
Jewish household and they're calling me a Nazi.
I
I'm
don't I
like,
don't know.
it's actually gross, man, to even use that word and not even understand the origins of it. Or, that's what happened with transphobic, calling
Mhm.
everyone transphobic, including
Yeah, it
me.
it kind it takes away the meaning of it. So
It
when
doesn't,
it's like when it
yeah,
actually happens, it's like, "Oh, who
yeah.
cares? Whatever."
That's right. That's exactly
So,
right. So then that's people just actually can be transphobic because no
mhm.
one takes it seriously. It's like homophobia, same thing. Like no one just
Right.
takes it seriously anymore. And so tell me a little bit about you growing up and coming out gay at 11, which is I'm like, what? How do you come out gay at 11?
Yeah, every time I say that, like the more that I mention it to people, they're always surprised,
Yeah.
and so I've started to be like, "Oh yeah, I came out really early." So, I don't know, I guess like something that I always kind of felt in myself, and
Mm,
growing up, people would always tell me, "Oh, why do you act like a girl? Why are you such a
mm,
girl? Why do you sound
mm.
like that? Why
See.
this and that?"
Yeah.
And it was always like very early on where I was like, "Okay, well, something's wrong with me. Like I'm different. I don't know why,
Right.
but something's wrong with me."
Mm,
And then it happens to every single kid when they become like that, like pastime between like fourth and fifth grade, that summer where like everyone starts to get puberty basically all
yeah.
at once.
Yeah.
And so we all start to discover what like our body parts are, and some people start to discover what gay is. And
Mm,
it goes from being like, "Oh, why do you sound like a girl?" to "Why are you so gay?" or whatever.
right.
And so
Right.
like me growing up, I didn't really know what that was. And like I just kind of like, okay, people said, "Why do you sound like that? Why are you gay?" or whatever. I didn't really understand it. And then, you know, there's a funny thing that happens when you go through the underwear aisle at a store, and you're gay. There's a funny thing that happens when you go through the underwear aisle, and you just you look at pictures of of guys and just like underwear, and you're like, wow, okay, well, that's nice. And then you pass by the section of bras, and you're like, okay. Next, that's a pretty color. I like that pattern.
Excellent. Excellent.
So it all kind of started slowly, and then going into sixth grade, like that summer going into sixth grade, is when I fully
Mhm.
found out what being gay was.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I like girls because I had like little girlfriends in elementary school,
Yeah.
and it was never like a thing for me. I saw like kids again starting to go through puberty, and their relationships with girls becoming a little bit more, you question things a little more, the kissing is a little different. You're not just giving pet kisses to each other.
Right.
And it just wasn't interesting to me, to be honest with you. It wasn't
Right.
interesting to me. And I don't know, it was almost like when I found out what being gay fully was, I was like,
That's you.
and then that was that. And it wasn't like at that point I didn't know about anything like remotely sexual or anything like that.
Right.
So it was literally just like, why do I think that boy is cute? Why do I not
Right.
think that girl is cute? Why do I think she's a good friend? Why don't I think she's cute like the other guys think she's cute or the other boys think she's
Sure.
cute? And that's when that happened. And so I came out to them, and
Wow.
Quite the story.
Well, I can relate to that. I was like very attracted to girls as a young kid. I grew up in the '60s. I'm old, and so you don't even that wasn't even on the table, dude. Like, no, but I knew that I really and for me, if I was like, I must be a boy. I must be a boy because I like girls. But trans, none of that stuff existed. I was just a tomboy, but I kept that secret back in the day. I never even spoke about it. So now you're going into high school, and are you openly gay in high school?
Yeah, so I actually, I don't know why I was in such a rush, but it was like very immediate for me. I came out to my parents when I was 11, and then basically when I went into middle school that same summer.
Okay.
I was already going into middle school.
Yeah.
And so going into 6th grade, I came out to my parents in August. I started school in August.
Yeah.
I tried to do the whole like let me pretend like I'm straight thing, and I tried to
Yeah.
get a little girlfriend when I was in 6th grade. And then I quickly was like, yeah, I'm going to waste this girl's time and this is sad. And so I was like, no guys, I'm gay. So and then from there on, that was that. And it was hard because I got bullied like a lot in middle school,
Mm,
like a lot.
I'm
Because like I
sorry.
said, I was still in that cusp time frame where it was like becoming more okay to be gay, but kids were
Yeah,
still assholes about it
totally.
openly.
Yeah,
And so middle school was hard, but like I was telling you just a moment ago, like it's part of the formative years. And to be honest with you, it's part of the reason why I have such a strong character and strong
great.
disposition now.
Yeah.
So as an adult, I wouldn't change it, to be honest with you. I don't regret it.
Good. Thank you for saying that. I'm a believer of struggle. If you don't go through struggle, you just don't even understand. You got to struggle to get to
Yep.
this next level so that you understand what you have, who you are. Struggle is not bad. That's why they're like, oh, kids need to take puberty blockers at 10 or they're going to struggle. I'm like, what are you even saying? They're going to, so you're going to give them a different struggle. And that struggle is going to be osteoporosis, no
Right.
sex drive, right? Because did you interview Brianna Ivy?
Yeah, I did. So
So
I
you know
heard
the story.
the whole story. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and, the fact that like being on puberty blockers so early basically
Yeah.
shortens the length of your member. And so now when you go to transition, now as an adult, it's
That's
like
right.
an inch long, an inch
Oh my
deep, I should
god.
say,
Oh
or
my
not
god.
even an inch deep. And so,
No.
like, regardless of what someone's personal opinion is on transsexuals and trans
Yeah.
surgeries, like,
Yeah.
I think anybody can agree that it's not, it's sad. It's not an ideal position for a human being
No.
to not be able to have sexual relations. It's just not okay,
First
you
off,
know?
I don't
And
care what anybody's
not just for Brianna, just in general. It's not
in
okay.
general, you cannot give a medication to a child so you're the adult making the choice for this child. Well, I know because I've interviewed a lot of detransitioners and I've interviewed enough of young kids who were put on puberty blockers. They have no sex drive and they'll never have a sex drive again. And that's the other thing, the genitals, it hits male to females like Brianna, but for female to male, it's more like psychological stuff happens and physical because it doesn't really have anything to do with the genitals. But that being said, it literally wipes out your desire to have sex. It just messes with what. How can we have anybody think that that is okay for a child to take medication like that? It's bizarre.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you were asking me the question directly, but I'll answer it
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, no, yeah.
I think that one of the ways that you can have that happen is by following that up with the lie that it's reversible.
Right on, dude.
So when
Right
you
on.
so alone by itself, it's questionable to a normal human being that doesn't have some sort of mental
That's right.
delay going on or something going on mentally. But when you hand them out together, it's easier to take that in. And so you're like, okay, well, it's, I'm a parent, but it's reversible. Okay, honey, we can try this and see maybe if you're
That's
older,
right.
things change maybe, but it's reversible.
That's
So we'll
right.
be okay. No, your child is infertile.
That's
Your
right.
child is not going to have a family. Your child is going to have an extensive long list of problems going on later on in their
Yep.
life,
Yep.
unfortunately because of being uninformed as a parent.
That's
And
right.
unfortunately this is up to these doctors to be able to properly understand what they're doing, and unfortunately the science can't back them up yet. So they're
And they
doing
keep
things by
doing it.
guessing.
But
Right, they're doing things by guessing.
that is the they know it doesn't. It literally cast report, WPATH, all of it. It has literally come out on the table. Any medical doctor can look at
Yep.
that and say, "Oh no, no, what are we doing?" But the United States, that's why we've got to know it has to do with some kind of money situation or
Mhm.
control, right? I'm a parent. If someone told me, "Oh my God, your kid's going to do X, Y, and Z if you don't do X, Y, and Z," you panic, dude,
Absolutely.
because you want to make sure that that kid doesn't get it. So it's such a really, they're smart, those people. A very good manipulative little tool they used that got
Mhm.
parents, because I do know some parents that regret doing that with their kids, but they explained it to me that they were put in a position, and I'm like, you do not, they feel guilty. Those parents feel
Absolutely.
guilty for doing that, but they didn't have a
Absolutely.
choice. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh man, it breaks my heart that whole we're messing with kids under the LGBTQIA label. They hate
And
us.
that's why people like you and I have, unfortunately, like we were mentioning just earlier, we've had to make the differentiation between that part of the group and the other part of the group that doesn't even think we're really part of a group anymore, to be honest with
That's
you.
right. That's right.
So
That's right.
that's why we need to make the differentiation between the two people or the two
100%.
groups.
The two groups, the TQIA. Look, I'll take LGB. I'm cool with that. I feel actually more connected, honestly. And as a community, the majority of my friends are gay. So I feel that, and they're not trans. I don't have a lot of trans friends because I can't even, unless they're like older like me and been around for a long time, but that's rare. But the majority of my friend base is LGB, if that makes sense. And just regular people that aren't in that situation. But because that's why it needs to separate, because the TQIA pee poo 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 is literally a socialist Marxist movement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
We
right.
agree there.
We totally agree. So what made you? So is that what made you start your channel? What, you just wanted to start speaking out?
So it's a mix of a few things. I had a personal experience with somebody that I was very, very close friends with. And I just a regular gay twink their whole life. I met
Okay.
them in well, in high school. I met them in high school. And we were part of a very similar, like a very close group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very, very close friends, just that big group of people. And
Yeah.
then me and this person, him, after a
Mm-hmm.
certain amount of time, got very close and started hanging out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to know this individual on a very, very personal level. And so one day, come to find out that it was like a very intimate like setting where it wasn't anything too crazy. We were friends for a while, and so we came to hang out to watch a movie or whatever, and we had like a little bit of an intimate moment. And not too long after that, which is what was confusing to me, not too long after that, maybe I think a week later, maybe a few days later, we hung out again. And that's when they told me that they were transgender.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, cool. As a friend, regardless of what my personal opinions are, and me personally, I have the opinion of like, if you have a medical condition, I don't have a problem with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a medical condition, I don't have a problem with you because I'm not a psychologist. So it is not my responsibility to tell you whether or not what you have is factual or whatever. Again, I can read a book and say, is that a thing? Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
We know from science, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the problem that I had with this person, it's what led me to part of the reason that led me to start my channel was that I was like, okay, sure, understandable. Um, so what are you gonna do to start affirming your transition? Me and this person are the same age. And the response that I got was, what do you mean? And I said, I mean, how are you gonna affirm your transition? Like you're telling me that you're a woman,
Yeah.
what are you gonna start with first?
Yeah.
And the response that I received was, and keep in mind, I was close with this person, so I felt comfortable asking a question like that.
Right.
The response that I received was, what do you mean? I don't have to do anything. I'm a woman. And so keep in mind, besides the tattoos, this person looked similar to me. A little bit more
Wow.
twinkish, more,
Yeah.
young boyish, a little bit more. He still had
Uh-huh.
like that twinkiness going on with him,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but very similar to what I would present like. And so it
Yeah.
was confusing to me. And I said, but what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that you want to transition to be a woman, but you're telling me that you're not going to do anything. Yeah, because I mean, I'm a woman. Like, I don't have to really do anything to be a woman. Like, this is just who I am. And so that immediately led me down a rabbit hole. And I started being like, well, then if you're a woman, then I'm straight and I'm not. So
What?
what are you talking about? And
Yeah.
so that led me to researching the whole community and the whole conversation as a whole. And so it got to a point where I reached the part of the conversation where we start mutilating kids, and I was like, that's enough. And I pressed record and I started making videos. So that's basically what started things, to be honest with you.
Fantastic. That fantastic. I love that you questioned this person because you just showed us all this is what's happening to young gay men, especially the more effeminate ones. They're
Mhm.
being told or they're being someone told him they did
Yep.
or he just got around a group of people and he doesn't have to affirm. So is he now, I'm calling him he, I'm sorry, but is he now transitioned to a woman?
So from what I've seen, this person is not in my life anymore
Okay.
for multiple reasons that are not just this
I hear
specific
you.
reason.
Sure.
But from what I've seen, they have started to actually transition, and like they've done like I guess like
Uh,
random things that one would consider, I guess, transitioning. I personally, all the trans people that I've met, I've never known to have somebody be like, okay, well, my first transition is going to be doing my nose, because like that's usually not the thing that you do first, but whatever. So that was the
Wait.
first thing.
Oh
Yeah,
my
so that was the first
god.
thing, and like long hair and dressing more female, but for the most part it's all very um like outer aesthetic. It's
Cosmetic.
not
Yeah.
really anything that you'd be like, okay, that's a woman. That's a
Wow.
trans woman. That's no, that's not.
Wow.
Still no.
That's the new
Well, I mean,
trans woman. That's
we
the new
got
one.
it from the beginning. I'm a woman. I don't have to do anything. And that's
Clearly.
unfortunately the mindset and the idea that most people in this community have adopted, and it's dangerous
Oh my
because
god.
I don't think that people understand it, and I've highlighted it so many times. Brianna Ivy literally told me,
Yeah.
they grabbed my testicles and they pulled them out of my body and they were disposed.
God, it's so sick.
So
Right.
this is
Wow.
not reversible, and these are serious things. And we have the I call them the trans Karen, the one that's going to like waiters and being like, oh well, this
Ah,
and this, and talking about getting trans surgery with a popsicle and
disgusting.
the lollipop, and trying to make things more kid friendly. It's like,
That's
why would
right.
you do that?
That's right.
Why would you do that?
We never did that. We never ever did that. That's why I keep going back to telling you why we distinguish transsexuals and transgender. I see because I don't identify as trans. This is an identity. It's a medical condition. When
Right.
that's I can show you the difference. These kids are trans. I'm like, that's the last thing you want people to know, right? You don't want people to know you're trans. That's why you get no scar. I don't have scars on my chest. So I can take my top off and I can literally look like a dude. That was always the case that I could walk down the street and nobody would ever know. They would just say that's Buck, right? And now these kids want you to, they're flashing these
Right.
scars and like they're like, yay. I'm like, what's happening? You've literally become trans. That's how you see the difference of that. It's like, that's what gender dysphoria is. Gender
Yeah, it's
dysphoria is
become its own label. It's not like
that's right.
transitioning from one sex to another. You're
No,
transitioning from a gender to trans.
to trans. That's
Right. And
exactly right.
though, I mean, to my understanding, the entire time the idea has been to blend into society, because that's why it's important. And I made a
Right.
video about this the other day. It's
Right.
important to make sure that it's discussed that this is a medical condition, because if not, then what's the difference between the surgeries that you got, Buck, and the
Hmm.
surgeries that Kim Kardashian gets to
That's right.
affirm her body?
That's
Like, if
thank
this isn't
you.
a mental,
Thank you.
a medical condition, then
That's right.
what are we talking about? What are you transitioning to? You know what
That's
I
right.
mean?
Thank you for saying that. I fought with along with my other friends to get this under the insurance label. I had to pay for everything out of pocket, work tons of jobs. It was a lot. It's a heavy when you don't have a medical space that helps you move through this. Everything I had to pay for out of my own pocket. It was insane. Now it will pay for it, and we did
Mhm.
fight to get that. That's why it needs to stay under medical, and that's why it needs to be a medical. Now these kids can go to any doctor and have their boobs cut off at 15, and the
Right.
doctor doesn't even ask for anything. It's like, sure, okay. What?
Yeah,
So
and I don't know if there has been like a change in the procedures, but you just highlighted it. The fact that like
yes.
I don't know if it's like a choice to purposely have like the scars. I don't understand that aesthetic
Nope.
choice.
Nope. It's not, so it's number one. I saw what happened. I was watching it, right? Because I made sure I didn't want scars. So I was one of the very I was actually the first here to have this particular surgery called the keyhole incision. Remember, I transitioned 32 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, and I was an experiment on some level. And I found this specific surgery that they did on men, gynecomastia, right? Men who have boobs, which we would call bitch
Right.
tits. But so I
Right.
got that surgery, so it looked like, and I never had scars, and that was so. Then you fast forward, I start seeing these kids getting their just lopped off. It just looks like they got lopped off, and surgeons were doing 5 surgeries a day. 5 a day. Who does that? That's insane. And so
Yeah.
I saw it become like a mill, if that makes sense. And then the scars started being like, oh well, I have scars. It doesn't matter because the surgeon doesn't isn't being sort of put in this position to say I don't want scars. And then what came next? No nipples. So now these kids have ripped things like this with no nipples, Daniel. No nipples. Who does that?
I mean, honestly, to be honest with you, the only answer to that question is somebody who really wants to have their license removed. And it's only a matter of
Oh,
time, to be honest with you. It's
that's
really
right.
only a matter of time
That's right.
because we may be able to, at the end of the day, this is America, and as long as, if those doctors work for a conglomerate of hospitals,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
lawsuit is going to be reduced to a
Yes.
settlement and nothing's going to happen with that.
That's right.
But if we're talking about the court of public opinion, they better run.
They are.
They
It's
better
happening.
run
It's
because
happening.
when it does happen, when like
Yeah.
the ceiling does crash down,
Yep.
and all of a sudden there's a bunch of children that are like, well, I was 15 and now I'm 25 and
That's right.
this is not okay.
Oh
And
my
then all of a
God.
sudden, all of those things start happening, and it's sad because
Oh,
you hit it on the nail. We talk about these things like they're, social dilemmas and whatever. And yes, they are. But at the end of the day, like there are
yes.
real children that are being affected by these
That's right.
issues.
That's right.
And I've had some people say I remember this comment, somebody who commented under my video with Brianna. I had a 2-part interview.
Mhm.
One of the comments on one of the videos was, oh, well, you just had a bad surgery. Your surgery was just not good.
These assholes. Assholes. That's how I know it's not a community. It's
Like,
a cult.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who says that
exactly.
to
It is a
somebody?
cult. And it
Yeah.
and keep in mind, like, this is a person who, at least in Brianna's specific case, like,
Yeah.
I believe Brianna started when she was 12.
Yes.
So, like, this
Yes.
is like mental prepping that you're doing very early. And
God.
these doctors telling you, oh, well, we got to make sure that we do everything in order so that when you're 18, we can go to that big step and we can cut off the genital. And
Wow,
it's
dude.
like, this is not like, we can't get these things back. It's like, I don't think that people understand the gravity
No,
of what these things are,
they do
because a
not.
lot of these procedures are not only experimental
Yep.
but body reconstructions.
That's right.
You're redesigning the body in some cases to do things that it wasn't supposed to do.
That's
There,
right.
the procedure that Brianna had, where they basically, it was a procedure, from what I remember, that was mainly supposed to be for biological women, and it was to basically create an opening for women that had all the internal body parts but
Mhm.
not the one that had an actual opening. The opening part was the problem.
Mhm. That's
But
right.
what about the other parts that are supposed to automatically be there? It's not just about making a hole,
That's
because it's like, we're not just holes, like, like,
right.
we're not just holes as human beings. So there's a little more to that, and that's scary that people don't get the gravity of these experimental procedures.
Well, I think people do because how can you not, dude? I don't have that surgery and I've been championing for not having that surgery forever because even 10, 15 years ago, I'd be like, what? It doesn't even work. Like, it's not a regular penis. And I'm like, well, then why would I do that? And
Right.
it's pretty much the same procedure. There are guys, and I want to put this out there real quick. There are guys who have it. They're happy with it. More power to you, buddy. But I do think it's not for everybody. And if you're choosing to do that, I don't know if you know who Scott Nugent is, but he had the surgery. You should get him on your show. He's great. He's a trans man who had the bottom surgery and it destroyed his life. And
Wow.
now he's
Okay.
fighting against doctors. I'll send you his. You should get him on. He's a great guy. But
Okay.
now he went back to
Thanks.
living as a woman, but he looks like me, and he says he's a woman and he wants to walk the world. That's why there's no going back. I could never go back to living as a woman, even if I wanted to. It's
It
not
would
going to happen.
it would basically be another transition.
That's right. That's right.
So it's one
That's
of those
right.
things where you would jump through one hoop to have to cross through another one. And so that's
But the point is, you're never supposed to look back. That's the whole point of transition. You're supposed to know I'm moving forward because this is how I feel. You're never, we didn't have detransitioners before until all this nonsense started happening. And, there are 3 or 4 lawsuits happening. They're friends of mine who are suing Kaiser, suing hospital. It's already, the lawsuits are already happening, dude. It's going to, all of this is going to get shut down. I don't care what anybody says. But the problem is, all the young people who are going to be fucked up. I'm just going to say it, fucked up in the wake of all of this. And what's going to happen? I don't care how much money you give these kids, right? They're never going to be able to have babies. They're never going to be able to breastfeed.
and
They're
no one's
never,
ever going to help them. Like I
nope,
think that if
nope.
we can't, if we are right now in our current government trying to fight for veterans to have rights,
Oh my God.
like we're gonna give rights to people that what somebody in the government, I guarantee you, is gonna argue, oh well, those surgeries were elective. We're gonna pass our money to people that
That's
had
right.
elective surgery.
That's right.
Like we
Yeah.
this is why it's so important, and again, this is why it's so important to prevent so that we don't have to deal with that.
Well, dude, I had to go through psychological training. I had to get letters. It was steps. That's what exactly what you said is so true. Because guess who's going to be held responsible? The person who made the choice to do it. That's why they don't have to go to a system. If they had to go to a system, they could blame the psychologist who wrote the letter. They could. So many doctors don't even ask for letters anymore. They're like, so that's why, because now the kid can get blamed for doing it because the kid made the choice to do it,
Yeah,
and he should
or
have
stay in
thought about
contact
it.
with them.
Yeah, that's right. It's
Yeah,
so
in Brianna's
gross.
case, Brianna had mentioned over to me that um in that specific instance, there was one doctor who just never responded ever again.
Oh my God.
And that's something that is I've heard is happening to a lot of people. And at the end of the
That's
day,
right.
someone watching this, like you can take that as just like anecdotal and that's totally fine. But
Right.
at the end of the day, like how many anecdotes does it have to take for you to be like, well, maybe I should look into it?
How many
Like,
kids need to be
right.
hurt?
How many examples do you need
That's
to be
right.
like,
That's right.
let me just Google this really quickly. And it's just a quick picture because
Ugh,
there's photos of of people, young people who are getting, you know, grafts taken from their thighs
I know.
to create
The
limbs, and
penis.
it's
Yeah,
something that you can literally see it, that there's been a graft
that's
removed
right.
from their body.
That's
And a
right.
lot of these kids, they may be okay with this now, but
That's
there's a
right.
lot of people who become adults and they're like, man, this graft doesn't look so good and I'm a little
No,
ashamed and I can't wear shorts and
that's right.
it sucks. It really
That's
does
right.
suck.
A
It
20-year
really
old
does.
can't make that choice. They cannot make that choice. I don't care what anybody says. That's why I'm hated beyond belief in the trans community. And I don't give a shit, dude, because I'm 62 and you can go, like, I'm saving these kids.
Yep.
I don't care. That's my mission right now.
And you have kids, so it's a little different
Yeah,
for you. It's a little bit
I'm
more
like,
personal.
it's very personal. If my kid came home and said he was trans, let me tell you, that kid would be straight up in a psychologist's office
Right.
immediately, and I would actually remove him from the friends group that he was around.
And
That
that's an
that's what.
important step. And that's an important step. I don't think there's anything. I feel like people have adopted this mindset of like, we're having this conversation about how we don't agree with like immediately transing your kid. But there, it's almost like they've demonized the idea that like, oh, maybe they should just go to a psychologist first.
You
Like, it's
think?
like they've demonized this idea that like
That's
maybe
right.
it's okay to go get help. Like we live in a society that talks about mental health
That's
awareness and
right.
whatever.
Yep.
We should just be like, yeah, well, Timmy thinks he's a girl, and
Yeah.
Timmy has liked trucks and liked boy
That's
stuff since
right.
he was a child. And all of a sudden, we
Yep.
went to the school and he thinks something
Totally.
different. Let's
That's
go to
right.
the doctor.
Unbelievable.
Let's talk to somebody.
Since when do we not psychologically look at a child who's we're telling kids they can change their sex? We're telling them that it's impossible to change your sex. I never changed my sex. I
Yep.
changed my appearance.
Yep.
That is so a kid is having this idea that he's going to be a boy, that she's going to become a boy, but she still has a vagina. So when she goes to high school and she has to go into the locker room and she doesn't have the penis that all the other boys has, what do you think is going to happen with that girl who thinks she's a boy? Right?
Yep.
I can
How confusing is that?
Oh my God, I can lay it out to you because I've had this experience. but they're not telling the kids, right? Or they say this bullshit that kids know who they are. Like, do you have kids?
Well, there's some kids to a certain extent, to a certain age, there's some kids that still believe in Santa Claus. So,
Totally.
you know,
I mean,
if
and
we're
again, I
if
want to point out that there's a difference between understanding your sexuality. That's different. And there is no harm. There is no harm with a 11-year-old kid saying, I'm gay. Maybe they grow out, maybe they decide they're not later on, but nothing is wrong. You know, nothing happened to you, right? Nothing happened physical
right,
or
because I didn't have to, like, cut something off of
that's
myself to
right.
be able to, like, be gay, you know?
That's right. That's
And
my point.
you're totally right. Like, there are some people that are bisexual their whole lives or growing up, and then, like, they
Totally.
end up getting married to, a straight relationship.
That's
And
right.
that happens, like, all the time,
All
and
the
it should
time.
be totally okay. And I don't think,
Yes.
like you said, there's anything wrong with, like, a child having the understanding of,
Nope.
there's some families that have a mom and a dad and a mom and a mom and a dad
That's
and a
right.
dad. I don't think there's anything wrong with that because at the
No.
end of the day, like, it's just somebody's family. I
That's
think
right.
that most people have a problem when we're like, "Oh, okay, well, let's bring them to gay the pride parade."
So gross. So
Right, that's
gross.
a little bit of a different conversation
You
because it's
think?
like, you should be able to be, happy and proud of the family that you've created
Yeah.
within the 4 walls of your home. Now, that doesn't mean that you're gay within the 4 walls of your home, that's not
That's
what I
right.
mean. What I mean is just that, like, you shouldn't have to go to a parade half naked to feel included in society.
Oh, it's so sick. It's an indoctrination. That's
Right,
all indoctrination right there. We never
absolutely.
wanted kids at Pride. It's an adult entertain. It's adult space, dude. Drinking beer and running around in BDSM and all of
Why would a
that stuff.
normal adult want kids around a situation like that? It's awkward. So
Yes,
why
no
would you even
normal
want
adult.
that?
No normal adult would do that. These are weirdo adults who are now indoctrinating children into a sexual space. I do
Yep.
believe that. And then we're being, and the problem is that our community is being sort of, now we're all being called pedos and shit because of
That's why we
these.
have to be as vocal as we are. That's
That's
why it's
right.
so important.
That's right, friend. So, wow, that hour went by fast. Oh my
It did.
God. You are great. I love you so much, my friend. Now we're
Thank
connected.
you.
Now, so I want everybody, so you want to leave a little something before we leave to maybe out there, some wisdom from a 22-year-old kid who's really smart.
Thank you. You know, I think that the only thing that I wanna say is that one of the most courageous and important things that you can do regardless of your age is to figure out who you are. And if
Mhm.
you can do it early, do it earlier because once you do that, at that point, everything just becomes easier and you can
Mhm.
start having fun. So before you start going to a doctor and, saying that you're a certain way and snipping parts of yourself off,
Mhm.
maybe you do have a medical condition, but it's really important to be able to understand yourself first before you can, jump through those big hoops in life. So
Right
I'll
on.
just leave you with that. If you can figure out who you are, do it early because life gets
Great.
funner when you do that.
Oh, that's an excellent message. Thank you, friend. Thank you for
Thank
caring.
you for having me.
No, thanks for stepping up. I'll put a link to your channel. Everyone start following this guy. He's super, super smart. And we need, we're building bridges between us and putting it
Thank you,
out
Buck.
there and, representing in a way that we don't see a representation. And so with that, thanks everybody for liking, watching, subscribing, doing all the things you do. I'll see you on Wednesday on the live and we'll have a little discussion about this when I see you. So